In this video, I want to demonstrate to you the typical steps you should go through when implementing an experiment in your online business. More specifically, I will demo for you how one of these website A/B testing tools works. I chose to show you Google Optimize because it's free and also because as of recently, I like this the most. But this video is not about Google Optimize. You might use another tool or you might watch this video a bit later when they moved a few buttons in Google Optimize from here to there. It doesn't matter. Whichever A/B testing tool you use, the main concepts will be the same. Okay, so your first step is obviously to register to the service you want to use and to set it up to your website. Most of these tools work with a JavaScript snippet, which you should embed into your website's code. Whichever tool you use, you will find a very detailed step-by-step tutorial on how to set up that tool to your website, so I won't cover that in this video. It's not very difficult, just follow the steps that you see after registration, or if you work for a bigger company, you might ask a developer to help you too. Below the video, I link the how to get started tutorials for Optimizely and for Google Optimize. The only technical thing that I would like to talk a bit more regarding the tracking code setup is called flickering. It's a very annoying symptom of a wrongly set up A/B testing tracking code. So flickering means that a user who should see your version B sees version A first for a microsecond, causing this small flashing effect. It's not a good user experience, but you can avoid that if you set up your JavaScript tracking code correctly, but more about that in a later video. Okay, I trust you there, and for now, let's say that you managed to register and embed your tracking code to your website. Great. Now you will have to create your first A/B test. Click Create Experience. And first, find a meaningful name for your experiment. I will call this one A/B Testing Course Demo. But you should go with something more descriptive like red button test on landing page or 3-tiered pricing test or something similar. Put here the URL of the page you want to use in your test. I will go with the landing of this A/B testing course, https://data36.com/A/B test like a data scientist. One thing here, be careful when you add the link, use the full URL here, so add the HTTPS prefix too. Most A/B testing tools handle this automatically, but it's better to stay on the safe side. Okay, here is my full link. You can also define the type of the experiment you would like to run. You can choose A/B test, where you can set one or even more new versions. This is what we will choose. You can choose multivariate testing. I will talk about this later. You can choose a redirect test. Choose this when you already have created your variations on different URLs. This can be useful, for instance, when you A/B test different versions of a whole landing page. And you can choose personalization. This is not an experiment. Personalization is when you use Google Optimize to show different versions of your website to different audiences based on geolocation, based on the device they use, or anything else. For example, you can show slightly different headlines for your visitors in the UK, US, Australia, and the rest of the world. Personalization is an exciting thing, but it's also out of the scope of this course. But just in general, I would not recommend using Google Optimize for personalization. However, if you want to, you can try it out here at least. Okay, let's choose A/B testing, click Create. And we will have to go through these 5 steps to start the experiment. Let's start with the most straightforward one. Adding the new variant, click here. I will name this the red button version. Done. Okay, so here are my original and new versions. Let's edit the red button version. And I know that I said that red button, green button tests are not the best, but just for fun, I will set it so my group B will see red buttons instead of green buttons. Click Edit. And the good thing about Google Optimize, Optimizely, VWO, and all the similar tools is that they have this what you see is what you get type of interface. It's a graphical editor, so you don't have to code, you just have to point and click to create your new variations. To get access to this editor in Google Optimize, you have to work in Google Chrome, and you will have to download a free Google Chrome extension called Google Optimize. If you have that, you will see the same editor as I do on my screen. Okay, here you can change anything. You can change the name of the course, click Edit Element, Edit Text, A/B test properly, done. You can change the headlines, understand the science behind A/B testing, done. You can change the button colors. Scroll down here and change this from green to red. And you can replace images as well. Let's replace my image. I just have to change the source of the image with any other images on your website, so I will use this. Well, not the best picture, but you get the point. Okay. And you can even do advanced things like editing HTML codes. If you click here, adding JavaScript codes by clicking here, or changing CSS settings after clicking here. Either way, when you are done, just save your changes, click Save. And before you click down and leave the editor, just check out one last thing, the list of your changes here, because it can happen that during the editing process, you accidentally changed a few things you didn't want to change. If so, just find and remove those changes and keep only those that you actually want to use in the final version of your new design. So for me, I will keep only the background color change for my button, and I will remove this, 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 and this. Click done. Okay, so only my button color changed, the rest will stay the same. I click save again. And if you are done, just click done. So your new design is ready, but you will have to set a few more things. For instance, you can change the audience distribution between your variations from 50-50 to any custom percentages. Later in this module, I will talk about whether it is a good idea or not. For now, I will click done and stick with the 50-50 audience distribution. And here's another best practice. You should always check whether your new design works responsively on every device type. Sometimes a new design works nice on desktop, but it can be broken on the phone, and it can happen the other way around too. Luckily, here is this little preview button that you can click and preview the tablet, the phone, and the desktop versions of your new design. Let's check out the mobile preview. Seems good? Cool. Let's go to our next step, which is targeting. There are two parts of targeting, URL targeting and audience targeting. The first one, URL targeting, is about which pages you want to run your A/B test on. By default, your test will run only on the page you defined when you created the experiment, but you can also extend this. Most of the time you won't change it though. So in this specific case, the default is that all visitors who visit my course landing page will be in my A/B test, and this is exactly what I want. In other cases, you can add some more advanced rules, and this could be important for e-commerce stores when they test their product pages. So let's say that an e-commerce store business wants to change the color of the Add to Cart button, but they want to do that on all of their product pages. Of course, they won't have to set up an experiment for each and every page one by one. They can use a wildcard instead. They create their new variation on this specific landing page, but they can define that they want to apply the same change to all URLs. Let's say starting with, I don't know, course, dash, and something, or they could exclude URLs that contains, I don't know, Python in my blog's case. So there are many rules you can set in this menu. You can even use regular expressions if you are familiar with them. But of course, to apply one change to multiple pages on your website, the structure of these pages should be the same. Okay, I won't save this. I will just go with my original page targeting rule. And there is another aspect of targeting, which is audience targeting. And as I said, Google Optimize has many features here. You can set all types and combinations of device targeting, geo-targeting, UTM parameter targeting, and so on. Okay. Usually, it's also worth it to add a brief description about the experiment. You can just copy-paste here the information you put in the A/B testing hypothesis form from the previous module. It's just a formality, really, but when you work with a larger team, it might help them to quickly see what your experiment is about. Okay. And eventually, you will have to set your success metrics. I really like Google Optimize because it requires you to set one primary success metric. You can set more metrics, of course, but your primary metric should be the one that you will use to evaluate your experiment. We have already talked about the importance of this in the previous module, but another good thing is that in Google Optimize, you can use the goals that you have already set in Google Analytics. Choose from list. So I will just go with this first one. And if you want to set something more specific, you can also create custom goals here. And this should be it. You can run a quick diagnostics to see whether your tracking code is implemented correctly. Also, you can review everything you have done. But if everything's ready, you can just click the Start button. Well, actually, one more piece of advice here. When you publish an A/B test, you can break your website. If you have done everything correctly and really carefully, it won't happen. But just in case, here are 3 tips before clicking that Start button to avoid disasters. First, you can find a checklist in the extra section of this module that I named Can I Start This Experiment? To make sure you didn't forget about anything, go through that checklist before you start your experiment. You can also ask one of your colleagues to review your A/B test. Sometimes, when you are deep into a project, you can't spot obvious mistakes by yourself, so if you have anyone else at the company who works with A/B testing, ask her to review your project before you click the Start button. And my third tip is, don't publish the A/B test the same day you set it up. When you have finalized everything, do something else, go home, sleep on it, and with a fresh head on the next day, review everything. If it still looks good, then you can start your A/B test. Here's an extra tip. Right after you have started your A/B test, go to an incognito window on your desktop, mobile, and tablet devices and check out the different variations you set up. If nothing seems to be broken, your A/B test made it to production. Nice. A common question that I get here. How does Google Optimize know that a user has seen one of your A/B test versions before? The answer is pretty straightforward. Just like most other online analytics tools, it works with cookies. It means that when a visitor of your website is assigned to one of your A/B test variations, a cookie will be placed into her browser, and as long as the cookie is there, she will see the same version when she comes back to your website. Of course, only as long as your A/B test is running. So this cookie-based visitor tracking works pretty nicely, but it comes with a few things you should be aware of. If a visitor visits your website from an incognito window, or if she blocks cookie usage, which is a very uncommon thing, by the way, the tracking cookies won't be placed and she will be handled as a new visitor and will be reassigned to Group A or Group B every time she visits your web page. Again, this is very uncommon. Market benchmarks say that on average it is below 2%. By the way, this is also the reason why you are able to check all the different versions of your experiment from incognito windows after you start your experiment. The other thing that you should be aware of, that if the same visitor visits your website from 2 different browsers or from 2 different devices, she might see different versions. Usually, this won't cause any problems, but it's better if you know about it. Okay, this was it. This is how you set up and start your first experiment. Doesn't seem too difficult, does it? As I have said, implementation is not the hardest step of the A/B testing process. Sure, there are a few things that you should go through and watch out for, but after setting up a few experiments, you will be able to do this with your eyes closed. Well, not literally, but you get the point.